You said on this trip that the Chinese military has become noticeably more aggressive in the air and at sea. How volatile does that make the region?
Well, I think that what we've seen over the last 5 years, really 5, 10, and even 15 years, is a noticeable market increase of intercepts, aerial intercepts, and maritime intercepts, and we've seen a degree of assertiveness, that the rise over run, if you will, the statistical increase in the numbers of these activities that the Chinese Navy and Chinese Air Force have been doing is significant. And does it really increase the tension, as you asked? I think it contributes to that. I don't think it's the sole factor, but it definitely contributes to it.
Let me ask you this. There's been an increase in those interactions recently. How many of them involve Australian forces?
Several. It's not just American. It's American and Australian, also Canadian, and then several other countries in the vicinity of the South China Sea, Philippines, Vietnam, for example. All of that together in combination is a significant market increase.
How determined do you think the Chinese are to build a series of military bases throughout the Pacific, and what would be the consequences of that if they did?
Well, I think they're very determined. I think they've demonstrated that over time, and they've built a series of what they call a string of pearls throughout not only the South China Sea but elsewhere. And so they're building these military bases. They're not going out in a traditional way of conquering islands. They're actually creating them. And these bases give them a significant degree of military capability. So it's clear that the Chinese have designs to dominate the South China Seas from a military standpoint, and I think that should be a concern to people.
Is China building the capability to take control of Taiwan by force?
Well, I would say that President Xi, I guess it was going on two and a half years ago, made remarks in a speech to the Party Congress where he challenged the Chinese military to do just that, to build the capability. And he actually put a date on it. He said, I want you to have the capability to do that by 2027. Now, having the capability and doing it is two different things. The execution of something like that would be a significant geopolitical decision. It would be a decision made at the policy level. But in terms of military capability, it's clear that the Chinese are developing the capabilities in all the domains, in space and cyber, but also the traditional domains of land, sea, and air, to conduct a cross-channel attack and invasion, if you will, to seize the island of Taiwan if they make the political decision to do that. We watch that very closely. We're not seeing any indications of any imminent attack defined as in the near future, but they are definitely working towards a capability and exercise that capability in a variety of ways throughout the year.
So the Chinese tested a hypersonic weapon last year, a weapon that the US does not have. How formidable has the Chinese military become?
In the last 44 years, China, as we know, has developed an enormous economic power in the international system, the likes of which probably hasn't been seen in a rise over run of that type of economic growth in maybe several centuries. And with that economic growth came the money to buy and pay for and develop a very, very capable military, and they're doing that. So they went from a large infantry dismounted capability 44 years ago to today. They're developing a blue water navy. They've got fourth and fifth generation fighter aircraft. They have a very, very sophisticated air defense system. They have a very, very sophisticated anti-access aerial denial system with land-based cruise missiles to take out naval vessels. They've developed a strong, very capable space system. They have a very, very capable cyber capability, as well as their ground forces. So, yes, the Chinese are developing a world-class military, and it is something that is very, very concerning, not only for the countries of the Western Pacific, but really for the globe. So we pay very, very close attention to it. That is not to say, though, that a war with China is inevitable. I don't believe in historical determinism, and war is not, or history is not a linear exercise. So, but it is concerning that a country such as China is developing a level of economic and military power that is really significant, not only in the Western Pacific, but globally.
Well, you have been talking about the current volatility. Could the proposed visit by House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan create the kind of environment where mistakes can happen?
If in fact decides to travel, that'll be a decision that she and she alone makes. And if she decides to travel, and if we're asked, we'll provide necessary support. I don't know that it will necessarily increase tension or not. We'll have to wait and see. There's certainly some rhetoric coming out of China that is quite disturbing about that. But we'll have to wait and see. But our job, the military, is if asked, we'll do what necessary in order to ensure a safe visit.
The Chinese have also repeated their assertion recently of their sovereignty over the Taiwan Straits. Does that increase, again, the tension of this time?
Well, of course it does, because the Taiwan Straits are international waters in accordance with international law. Each country internationally has about 12 miles of ocean front along their coastlines that is part of the territorial waters. But the Taiwan Straits are some 80 plus miles wide. So the center line of the Taiwan Strait is international waters. And we, the United States, are committed to a free and open Pacific, and we believe in freedom of navigation. And we will continue to operate like that, as well as many other countries that do the same, to include Australia.
Did President Biden take you by surprise when he stated categorically that the US would defend Taiwan militarily if China invaded?
Well, I won't comment on what the president said, except to say that the United States policy is codified and has been codified in the Taiwan Relations Act and the three communiques, the 6 assurances, and that's well known. It's been U.S. policy for a considerable length of time. What we prefer, what our interest is.
I'm sorry, General. I'm just going to interrupt you there because the president is the commander-in-chief of the U.S. military, and he said that the U.S. would defend Taiwan militarily if China invaded. Is that him asking you to prepare for that?
Well, we are always prepared for all kinds of different contingencies, and it would be I don't think it would be wise for me to broadcast on a media what we prepare for in the future. I would just leave the policy as it is, and obviously we take our direction from the commander-in-chief, and we'll do as directed. And I would tell you that we are quite prepared to deal with any contingencies that occur.
In the event of war in Asia, the US would expect its allies to join a coalition. If Australia were to say no, how much damage would that do to the alliance?
The United States and Australia have been key allies ever since World War I, so well over 100 years. And we've been shoulder to shoulder. And I think both of our countries share similar values. We have similar outlooks, and we have similar policies. So I would think that if something occurred in the future, then Australia and the United States would still be shoulder to shoulder.
Let me ask you this. You've talked already about the extraordinary build-up in the Chinese military. At the same time, Donald Trump could announce his candidacy any day for the next presidential election. Why should Australia or any country in this region tie their fortunes to the US when its leadership is so unpredictable?
Well, I won't make comments, Sarah, on any U.S. domestic political outcomes or predictions in any way. But I would say that the United States has had a long and very consistent leadership role in the Pacific. We're both an Atlantic and a Pacific power. We have deep interests here, and we will continue to have deep interests. And I believe that we've got wide-ranging allies and partners throughout all of the Asia-Pacific. If you look at South Korea, Japan, Australia, the Philippines, Thailand, and many other countries. I just came from a conference in Sydney where 27 countries of the Asia-Pacific were meeting to discuss common issues of national security. So we have many allies and friends, and I think that we will continue to have many allies and friends throughout the region.
General Milley, thank you very much indeed for joining 7:30.
Hey, thanks, Sarah. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.